بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على أشرف الأنبياء سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We are starting from page 10, the chapter on establishing the prayer في إقام الصلاة. قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله تعالى به وهو الإتيان بها مقومة بشروطها وأركانها, which means it, meaning the obligation to establish the prayer, is to perform it together with its conditions and integrals. The difference between conditions and integrals is what? Conditions are those things that precede the prayer. Integrals are those things which are an obligation within the prayer. So conditions, what's done before; integrals, what's done in the prayer. Conditions of the prayer. فشرائطها ستة وهي الطهارة من الحدث والطهارة من الخبث وستر العورة واستقبال القبلة والوقت والنية. Its conditions are 6. They are, meaning the conditions done before the prayer: purification from ritual impurity as opposed to actual impurity. What is ritual impurity? Ritual impurity is, for instance, someone has no wudu. There is no actual impurity upon him, but ritually he is impure. Someone may be in a state of janaba, major ritual impurity, but have no actual impurity on his body. He is ritually impure as opposed to being actually impure. So removal of ritual impurity. So like performing wudu removes ritual impurity. Purification from filth, meaning actual impurity, like an actual impurity on the body or the clothing. Removal of this is an obligation. Covering one's nakedness, Awrah. For a man, this is from just below the belly button up to and including the knees. So the belly button itself is not included, but whatever is below the belly button up to and including the knees. This is an obligation. It does not mean a person prays with only shorts, meaning if you have shorts so long that they cover the knees and you pray, the prayer is still makruh, disliked, because you should cover the shoulders and the chest. But the obligation is, the minimal obligation is this much. For the women, the obligation is covering the hair and covering the entire body with the exception of the face and the hands, the awrah of the woman. Facing the qibla, so facing the correct direction, meaning qibla, meaning facing Makkah, the direction of Makkah al-Mukarramah. And if in Makkah al-Mukarramah, facing al-Masjid al-Haram. What is al-Masjid al-Haram? The masjid in which the Kaaba is located. The commencement of prayer time, meaning the time must be in. And the intention to perform the prayer, which is niyyah. These things are done all prior to the prayer. The author states integrals of the prayer, meaning those things which are.
Shaykh, would you not just let them know it's on page 10 that you're starting to talk?
If everyone could turn to page 10, the sisters as well, if you could turn to page 10 and 11, we have reached page 11. Integrals of the prayer. وأركانها أيضا ستة وهي تكبيرة الإحرام والقيام والقراءة والركوع والسجود والقعود الأخير قدر التشهد. Its integrals are also 6. They are the takbirah for ihram, meaning doing the takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, standing, qiyam. So with standing is fard in the fard prayer, wajib in the wajib prayer, sunnah muakkada in the sunnah muakkada prayer, mustahab, desirable in the mustahab prayer, and nafal in the nafal prayer. So when he states the integral of the prayer is qiyam, this integral of the prayer is in reference to the fard prayer and wajib in the wajib prayer. Recitation of the Quran. Recitation of any part of the Quran is an integral of the prayer, but reciting Surah Al-Fatiha specifically and a chapter after Surah Al-Fatiha is wajib. So, meaning, if someone prays the prayer and they recite any verse of the Quran, their prayer is done, but they have performed a disliked act by leaving Surah Al-Fatiha and a second chapter. So they must repeat the prayer because they have performed a disliked act. After this, number 4, bowing, meaning ruku' is one of the integrals of the prayer. Ruku'. Number 5, prostration. Number 6, and the final sitting for the duration it takes to read the testification of faith, tashahhud. So, sitting down in the last cycle of the prayer, for the amount it takes for a person to recite tashahhud. What is a tashahhud? At-tahiyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibatu, all the way up to abduhu wa rasuluh. This much amount of sitting is essential, meaning integral of the prayer. If you miss any one of these inside of the prayer, then the fard prayer is not performed, meaning if someone doesn't perform takbiratul ihram, the prayer is not done. If they do not do qiyam, standing, the prayer is not done. If they miss ruku', the prayer is not done. If they miss sujood, the prayer is not done. If they miss tashahhud, then the prayer is not done. These are integrals of the prayer. After this, the author states, ثم الطهارة من الحدث على قسمين، طهارة من الحدث الأصغر وهي الوضوء وطهارة من الحدث الأكبر وهي الغسل. In addition, purification from ritual impurities of 2 types. Purification from the lesser ritual impurity, which is ablution, wudu. Purification from the greater ritual impurity, which is purificatory bath, ghusl. So, when we say purification, meaning performing wudu and performing ghusl, is an obligation prior to the prayer itself. Meaning, if the person is obligated to pray and has no wudu, then they must perform wudu. And if they are obligated to perform ghusl, bathing, then they must perform ghusl, the entire bath. So any one of these 2. Are there any questions on this so far, what we've covered?
You mentioned that if you can't stand up when you're doing Surah Fatiha, there's some people who can't stand up, like for example my mum, she can't stand up for long period, she sits down when these days. Does that mean her salah is not accepted?
No, because what in Islam a person is not tasked, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. No soul is tasked beyond its capacity. So because she has, these are called ashabul udhr, meaning people with what? Legal excuse. Meaning anyone in Sharia who is legally excused, meaning someone who has an illness, then what she can do is sit for the prayer. This is for people with illnesses. So if someone has an ailment in the knee, ailment in the back, and they're unable to stand, then they can sit down and pray. Yes. But we're talking here about healthy people. Otherwise, we said purification is a condition for prayer, but imagine someone with a nosebleed, a continuous nosebleed. There is no time for the, meaning from Zuhr Salah to Asr Salah, their nose continues bleeding. So are they obligated now to keep performing wudu? The answer is no. Why? Because they have a legal excuse. Anyone who is legally excused is known as ma'adhur, meaning a legally excused individual. Any other questions? No other questions before we move on? Okay. Also, if there's questions from the sisters, they can write the question down and send it to the front. Lesser ritual impurity and what nullifies ablution. فَالْحَدَثُ الْأَصْغَرُ مَا يَنْقُضُ الْوُضُوءَ وهو كل ما خرج من السبيلين إلا ريح القبل في الأصح ونجاسة سائلة من غيرهما كدم وقيح والقيء إذا ملأ الفم وهو ما لا ينطبق عليه الفم إلا بتكلف ونوم لم تتمكن فيه المقعدة من الأرض وإغماء وجنون وسكر وقحقحة بالغ يقظان في صلاة ذات ركوع وسجود. The lesser ritual impurity is that which nullifies the ablution. It is number one, anything that exits the two passages, meaning the private front and back passage, with the exception of wind from the front passage according to the more correct opinion. Now someone may ask, how does wind come out from the front passage? We can understand wind coming out from the back passage. How does it come out from the front? When someone goes to the toilet to relieve themselves, when they relieve themselves of water, sometimes they may get up and later on when they move about, they may feel that some drops of urine may have come out. Later on when they check, they look and they find no drops of urine. This was because of some movement within the kidneys or the bladder, which was felt in the front private organ, but in reality there was no urine. So this does not invalidate the ablution. But if there is urine, then the urine will invalidate the ablution. So anything which comes out from the front and back passage. The emission of flowing impurity from other than them, meaning from other than the front and back, such as blood or pus. If someone bleeds in Hanafi school, in our school, if someone bleeds, the bleeding will invalidate the wudu, the ablution. How do you determine flowing blood? Meaning, blood comes out, how do you determine flowing blood? If someone has a wound, they get a tissue, they wipe the blood. If the blood resurfaces on the skin, this means that blood is what? Flowing. This is how you determine flowing blood. But if you wipe the blood and nothing reappears, then that blood was not flowing. So this is what is meant by flowing blood. Or if someone has a bloodshot in the eye, the bloodshot in the eye will not invalidate the wudu. Or if they have internal bleeding in the fingernail, this will not invalidate the wudu. So the way to determine flowing blood is wiping the blood with the tissue, and if the blood reappears, resurfaces on the skin, this means the blood is flowing, and this will invalidate the wudu ablution. Vomiting, if it fills the mouth, whereby the mouth is unable to close except with difficulty. Meaning, if a person vomits, but the vomit stays in the mouth and they swallow the vomit again, this will not invalidate the wudu. But if they are unable to keep the mouth closed, this means it was a mouthful of vomit. This will invalidate the wudu. Sleeping with one's posterior firmly seated on the ground, without one's posterior firmly seated on the ground. Now here, what is meant by this is if someone falls asleep, and they fall asleep in such a way that the posterior is off the ground, then by agreement the ablution is invalidated. But if the person sleeps with his posterior on the ground, his ablution is not invalidated. But there is one exception. That exception is if he is leaning against something and his sleep is so deep that if someone removed the thing that he was leaning on, he would fall to the ground. Meaning the sleep is so deep that if what he was leaning on was removed, he would fall to the ground. Then in such a case, he must also perform ablution. But if he is asleep in such a way that he is leaning, but if someone were to remove what he was leaning on, he would be alert and awake, then his ablution is still valid. So sometimes in a coach journey, sometimes someone may fall asleep so deeply that if someone were to remove the seat, they would fall. In such a case, they must renew their ablution. And the author, Shaykh Abd al-Ghani al-Ghunaymī, al-Maydanī rahimahullah, in his commentary on al-Quduri, al-Lubab, he mentions that in our day and age, people should renew their ablution if they sit down and fall asleep, because people eat too much in his time, which was over 100 years ago. So you can imagine the state of people today. They eat too much, and therefore this will cause wind, and therefore out of precaution they should perform ablution. Number 5, fainting. So if someone faints, their ablution is invalidated. Number 6, insanity. Insanity meaning that the person becomes totally insane. If they become totally insane, then the ablution would be invalidated. Number 7, intoxication. How do we define intoxication? The definition of intoxication would be one of 3 things. If the person takes the intoxicant and is unable to differentiate between things. Number 2, if he takes the intoxicant and he becomes numb, meaning his body becomes numb, he's unable to feel things. Or number 3, if he takes the intoxicant and his speech starts to slur, he speaks with slurred speech. In all 3 cases, if any one of these 3 things occur, then the person is in a state of intoxication. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Kullu muskirin haramun." Every intoxicant is haram, is prohibited. So, intoxicants which people smoke, weed, or any other intoxicant would fall under the same legal ruling as alcohol, meaning the intoxication is haram. Number 8, and loud laughter audible to others from someone pubescent and awake during a prayer consisting of bowing and prostrating. Meaning, if an adult, and that would be anyone who has passed the age of puberty, laughs out aloud during the prayer, which prayer? That prayer which consists of a ruku', bowing, and sujood, prostration. In that case, the prayer would be invalid and the ablution would also be invalidated. The question is, which prayer is the prayer without ruku' and sujood, bowing and prostrating? Salatul Janaza. So if in al-Janaza, funeral prayer, a person laughs out aloud, the prayer will be broken, but the wudu will not be broken. And if children under the age of 15 or under the age of puberty laugh out aloud in prayer, their prayer would be invalidated, but their wudu, ablution, would not be invalidated. So people who teach children in masajid, if the children laugh out aloud, which happens a lot in the masajid, then they do not have to renew their ablution. Otherwise the teachers would be sending every child to renew their ablution. The obligatory acts of ablution. So, prior to that, he has a passage, وَطَهَارَتُهُ بِالْوُضُوءِ بِالْمَاءِ الْمُطْلَقِ عِنْدَ وُجُودِهِ وَالتَّيَمُّمِ عِنْدَ فَقْدِهِ. The purification from the lesser impurity is by performing ablution with absolute water when present, and by dry ablution, tayammum when absent. Meaning, when you have water, which water is absolute water? Absolute water is any water which has not changed its characteristics. So, water from the rain, if you get snow and melt snow, water from a river, water from a spring, this is absolute water. So, performing ablution would remove ritual impurity. Also, in the absence of absolute water, then the person performs dry ablution, which is known as tayammum. Are there any questions before we move on? Any questions?
What if you're locked in normal circumstances?
Pardon?
What if you're locked in normal circumstances? You're not praying or doing anything like that.
The question is, if someone laughs out aloud outside of the prayer, will the ablution be invalidated? The answer is no. the invalidation of the ablution is only in those prayers, while praying, those prayers which have bowing and prostration. It is limited to that. Any other questions? No? Okay. وفروض الوضوء أربعة غسل الوجه وحده من مبدأ السطح الجبهة إلى أسفل الذقن طولا وما بين شحمتي الأذنين عرضا وغسل اليدين مع المرفقين وغسل الرجلين مع الكعبين ومسح الربع الرأس. The obligatory acts of ablution are 4. Washing, so these are the 4 obligations of wudu which should be memorized. Washing the face once. Its vertical boundary is from the beginning of the top of the forehead to the bottom of the chin, and its boundary horizontally is what is between the 2 earlobes. So from the top of the forehead, meaning from where the hairline starts. So if someone starts going bald, they start from their original hairline. By the way, the author in his commentary on al-Quduri, al-Lubab mentions that miswak. What is miswak? Miswak is the toothstick. So the miswak, this is the miswak. The miswak, what does it do? If someone uses miswak delays hair loss. But this, someone may say, and object to this, say, is this proven scientifically? We are not saying this is a scientific fact. This is based upon experience of certain scholars. So we do not present this as a scientific fact. It is not mentioned in the hadith, meaning in the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ. It's based upon experience of the jurists. So the hairline starts from where the hair was originally, up to the chin, and vertically from one earlobe. So that includes this area here, the side of the face, up to the other side, making sure this area is wet. Washing the hands up to and including the elbows. So up to and including the elbows. So if you miss out the elbows, you've not completed the obligation. Number 3, washing the feet up to and including the ankles. Number 4, and wiping a quarter of the head once. So these are the 4 obligations of wudu. The greater ritual impurity, al-hadath al-akbar. Wal-hadath al-akbar al-janabatu bi khuruj al-maniyyi ila zahir al-jasadi إذا انفصل عن مقره بشهوة وتواري حشفة أو قدرها من مقطوعها في أحد سبيلي آدمي حي وإنزال المني بوطء ميتة أو بهيمة ووجود ماء رقيق بعد النوم ووجود بلل ظنه منيا بعد إفاقته من سكر وإغماء والحيض والنفاس. The greater ritual impurity, janaba, is caused by the following: the emission of seminal fluid to one's outer body if it separates from its point of origin through desire, meaning this for the male. The disappearance of the head of the private male organ or its length from one that is severed in one of the 2 passages, meaning the private organs. Then number 3, ejaculation of seminal fluid through intercourse. Now someone may mention, why do they mention dead woman or animal? They give the legal ruling here, but this doesn't mean the action is halal. The action is haram, but they are giving the legal ruling. So these books were written in a time where people just wanted the legal ruling. Of course, when quoting the fiqh books today, we must contextualize the content of any fiqh book, any book of jurisprudence. Contextualize it to a modern setting. Finding a fine watery fluid on one's body or clothing that one believes to be seminal fluid after sleeping. Finding wetness on one's body or clothing that one believes to be seminal fluid after regaining consciousness from intoxication or fainting. So intoxication, he's mentioned intoxication, but does this mean intoxication is permitted? The answer is no. So if sometimes non-Muslims quote fiqh books of jurisprudence to say, look, your books contain this, your books mention this, intercourse with the dead body or intercourse with an animal. They are not saying these actions are permitted, like the way they are saying intoxication is not permitted, but they give the legal ruling relating to intoxication. And after purity, tohar from menses or lakya, this is for the women, meaning once the mens is finished, the cycles, or the lakya is afterbirth bleeding. Afterbirth meaning after childbirth. If women have bleeding after childbirth, the maximum period is 40 days. Some people are under the impression that if a woman gives birth, she becomes impure for 40 days. 40 days is not necessary. 40 days is the maximum period. But the minimum period could be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 days, 10 days, 3 days. Maximum is 40 days. But once the bleeding stops, then the woman is no longer impure. Lakya is what? In Arabic, nifas, and menses is hayd. The name for menses is hayd. وَطَهَارَتُهُ بِالْغُسْلِ وَالتَّيَمُّمِ أَيْضًا. The purification from the greater ritual impurity is by performing the purificatory bath, meaning ghusl, or dry ablution, meaning tayammum, if the conditions are met for its validity. So here, are there any questions before we move on? Any questions relating to this? No questions. The obligatory acts of the purificatory bath, ghusl, وَفُرُودُ الْغُسْلِ ثَلَاثَةٌ الْمَضْمَضَةُ وَالْإِسْتِنْشَاقُ وَغَسْلُ سَائِرِ الْبَدَنِ. The obligatory acts of the purificatory bath are 3. Rinsing the mouth, sniffing water up one's nose, up to the soft part of the nose. Now here, some people, what they do is that they take water up to the nose to such a degree that they take the water up to the soft part that their eyes start watering, or they feel the water going up to the forehead. Is this necessary? The answer is no. It's like when you perform sajda, some people think on carpets you must perform sajda with such force that eventually a mark will appear on the forehead. But if you perform sajda on the carpet, it's not necessary to press down so hard until eventually a mark appears on the forehead. Likewise, if you perform ghusl, it's not essential that the water goes up into the head. It's sufficient that it goes up to the bone. So you take the water up to the bone. This much is sufficient. And washing the entire body. So if someone has a shower, before having a shower, they gargle the mouth, sniff water up the nose, and in the month of Ramadan they avoid gargling to the throat. Just avoid water down the throat. Sniff water up to that, it goes up to the bone, not into the head. Then with the shower you bathe yourself, meaning you make sure the entire body is wet, including the belly button. So you make sure some water gets into the belly button, you place your finger into the belly button, making sure the belly button is also wet. Some people ask the question that what if after ghusl you perform you had a shower, but then you later realize I didn't gargle my mouth or sniff water up the nose. Do you have to re-perform the entire ghusl? The answer is no. What do? You just perform the gargling, placing water in the nose. Or if you wash the entire body and you left one part dry, later on you remember, I left this part dry, what do? You just go back and you just wet that part. That's sufficient. The obligatory acts of dry ablution, tayammum. Okay. The question will be answered in the Q&A because this is regarding shisha, so which people smoke. We'll answer that in the Q&As. You can send all your questions to the front in questions and answer session. If the question relates to the topic, I will answer the question now. If it relates to anything else, we will have after this session, we are going to have, inshallah, open questions and answers regarding anything.
Shaykh, that might have been pertaining to, the intoxication you just talked about.
Okay, the shisha here, the question then should be, is shisha an intoxication? The answer is, shisha doesn't fall under intoxication. But the next question would be, is shisha haram? Inshallah, we'll answer that in questions and answers. وفروض التيمم النية ومسح الوجه والذراعين بالتراب أو ما هو من جنسه كالحجر والرمل ونحوهما بجميع اليد أو أكثرها بضربتين وما يقوم مقامهما. The obligatory acts of dry ablution. Dry ablution meaning tayammum. Meaning when there is an absence of water for a mile radius, you perform tayammum, dry ablution. What are the conditions? Number one, the intention. So when you perform tayammum, you must have intention for tayammum, that I am going to perform tayammum. Second, wiping one's face, meaning they have the material, whatever the material may be, a stone, a rock, a brick, a wall, sand, or earth. So the person rubs his hand, and the first thing, he first makes the intention, I'm making intention of tayammum. He rubs his hands upon the material. So the first obligation is to rub the face. The question is it essential that there is dust on the hands? The answer is no. So if you touch a wall, after touching the wall there's no dust on your hands, you rub your face, that's sufficient.
But the wall can't be plastered, innit?
Yeah, but when we go on to the materials, I'll mention that. So, and wiping forearms with soil or that which is classified as such as stones, sand and the like, with all of one's hand or most of it with 2 strikes, or by that which is a substitute for them. So here, wiping the forearms, second obligations. First one was wiping the face, second one is wiping the forearms. So how does a person do this? They touch the material, wipe the face. Then they touch the material again. Then they wipe one forearm. Then wipe the other forearm. Once they have wiped both forearms, they have completed tayammum. So what substance is used? He mentions here stones, sand and the like. The condition for the substance is that the substance is from the ground. But the substance should be such a thing that if you throw the substance in fire, the rule is if you throw it in fire, the substance will not burn. So what he mentioned regarding plaster, if you throw plaster in fire, what will happen to plaster? Plaster which is covered with paint will not be permitted for tayammum. So marble is permitted, but marble with lacquer will not be permitted. But rock is permitted, stone is permitted, soil is permitted, sand is permitted. Why is metal not permitted? Because if you throw metal in fire, what will happen to metal? Melt. So that's the rule regarding the material used for tayammum. The conditions for the validity of dry ablution. وشرط صحته وجود العذر المبيح له كبعده ميلا عن الماء ولو في المصر وبرد يخاف منه التلف أو المرض وخوف عدو وعطش واحتياج لعجن لا لطبخ مرق وفقد آلة وخوف فوت صلاة جنازة عيد وليس من العذر خوف فوت الجمعة والوقت. The conditions for its validity is the presence of an excuse that permits it, such as one being remote from water by the distance of a mile, even within a city. So here in brackets the translator has placed half an hour or more of walking. I would say 15 minutes of walking. 15 minutes. Of walking is a mile. So if someone is lost in an area, they know that if they walk for 15 minutes in one certain direction, or they actually walk, they know water is unavailable in that direction, then they are permitted to perform tayammum. Extreme cold, from which one fears loss of life for limb or illness, meaning imagine someone living in the North Pole or in Siberia, and they are unable to perform wudu because the water is so cold, or they melt the snow and gain water from the snow. Would they be permitted to perform tayammum? The answer is yes. This is why Iqbal, the poet, mentions that in India, over 10,000 people from Siberia arrived. They said, we want to accept Islam, to some of the Indian ulama. We want to accept Islam, but we find ablution difficult because our country is cold. So those scholars said, you cannot perform your prayer except with ablution. You are not permitted to do this. So those people moved away from Islam. What fatwa should they have given? That you are permitted to perform tayammum, and therefore they would have entered Islam. Number 3, fear of an enemy or thirst. So if someone's house is surrounded by people and they are unable to come out the house, or they have thirst and there is only a small amount of water available, they are permitted to perform tayammum. The need for water to make dough, not to cook broth. Meaning, someone lives in an area and habitat which has only sufficient water to make bread. Because bread is an essential food, therefore they use the water for bread and they are permitted to perform tayammum. But broth is not an essential food. So therefore, if they have water only for broth, meaning soup or broth, then they perform ablution. If they have bread and meat. A lack of an instrument to extract water. So there is no instrument available in order to extract water. And fear of missing the funeral or Eid prayer. Funeral and Eid prayer are the only two prayers for which a person is permitted to perform tayammum. Why is this? Because funeral, if you miss the funeral that was permitted by the inheritor of the dead person, you cannot repeat such a funeral. So a man dies, his son permits the funeral. Later on, you cannot repeat the funeral in the Hanafi school. In other schools, you are permitted to repeat. But because there is no repetition of the funeral, you are permitted now to perform tayammum if you have no time. So the Imam does takbir, Allahu Akbar, and you have no time now to join the prayer. Except by performing tayammum, you are permitted to perform tayammum. And the same for Eid prayer. Why Eid prayer? Because Eid prayer has no replacement. Unlike Jumu'ah prayer, Friday prayer, Salatul Jumu'ah, the replacement is Salatul Dhuhr, meaning the afternoon prayer. So you are not permitted to perform tayammum for Jumu'ah prayer. Fear of missing the Friday prayer and one of the 5 daily prayers is not a legitimate excuse permitting dry ablution. Are there any questions regarding this?
You know the Eid prayer, if there's a Jamaat later on, then you don't have to do tayammum for that.
The question is regarding if there is a second Jama'ah for the Eid prayer. If the second Jama'ah is in another masjid, then you are permitted. In either case, you are still permitted. Why? Because takrarul Eid is not permitted in our school. Meaning, if you perform Eid in one place, Jummah and Eid is not re-performed in the same place. Even though the masajid tend to do this.
You know, if you do tayammum, and then you have like a grey ritual impurity that requires you to do ghusl. But if you do tayammum, would you have to do ghusl when water is available?
His question is regarding if you have greater ritual impurity and you perform tayammum, you would have to intend tayammum to remove the greater ritual impurity. You would have to intend tayammum, that you are doing tayammum in order to remove greater ritual impurity.
He said when water is available, would you have to do a ghusl then after, once tayammum's done?
Meaning, if water comes after,
He's done the tayammum to remove the ritual impurity, but then water becomes available later. Will you have to do ghusl now?
again, this question is, if someone does tayammum and then water becomes available, will the tayammum be invalidated? The answer is yes. So like this, the scholars have a riddle. A man is performing prayer. He does not pass wind. He doesn't laugh out aloud. He doesn't bleed. But his prayer is invalidated because his purity is invalidated. How does this happen? The answer to the riddle is, he was a man in a state of tayammum and water appeared in front of, meaning someone placed a bucket of water in front of him. So water will invalidate tayammum, meaning sufficient water will invalidate tayammum.
And just for them, you know the question we asked before in regarding salah, if the time was about to collapse, can they do tayammum and pray the salah, or would they do wudu and pray qaza?
If there's less time for the prayer, then the person must perform wudu if water is available. If they miss the prayer, then they perform qada. They make up the prayer. تتمة سنن الوضوء والغسل والتيمم. يسن في الوضوء التسمية والنية وغسل اليدين إلى الرسغين ابتداء والسواك والمضمضة ثلاثا ولو بغرفة والاستنشاق بثلاث غرفات وتخليل اللحية الكثة والأصابع وتثليل الغسل واستيعاب الرأس بالمسح مرة ومسح الأذنين والدلك والولاء والترتيب والبداءة بالميامن ورؤوس الأصابع ومقدم الرأس ومسح الرقبة لا الحلقوم. Supplement sunnahs of ablution, the purificatory bath and tayammum. So sunnahs of wudu, sunnahs of ghusl and sunnahs of tayammum. Sunnahs of ablution. The following are sunnahs of ablution. Beginning with the name of Allah, meaning saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Number 2, beginning with the intention. Number 3, washing the hands to the wrist at the beginning, meaning at the beginning, washing the hands including the wrist. Number 4, brushing the teeth using a toothstick, meaning miswak. Number 5, rinsing the mouth thrice, even with a single scoop of water. So 3 times placing water into the mouth. Number 6, rinsing the nose with 3 separate scoops of water. Number 7, combining one's thick beard with one's fingers. Meaning takhleel. Why is takhleel done? Firstly, what's the definition of a thick beard? If you are unable to see the skin, if you are unable to see the skin under the beard, when you wash the face, the water goes over the beard, but later on you perform takhleel. Takhleel is placing the hand into the beard. This is if you have a beard which is thick, and definition of thick is that the skin underneath the beard is not visible. If it's visible, then you must wash the skin of the beard. So combining in between the fingers, meaning when washing the fingers, doing takhleel of the fingers is rubbing the fingers, making sure the water enters the creases of the skin of the hand. Washing the limbs thrice, wiping the entire head once, because the fard was wiping 1/4 of the head, but wiping the entire head is fard. Passing one's a hand over the limbs as one washes them, washing them uninterruptedly, observing the recommended order, beginning the washing with the right limbs, the tips of the fingers, meaning when you wash the hands, start with the tips of the fingers, and the front of the head when wiping the head. So You do not wipe backwards, you wipe from the front. And wiping the nape of the neck. So wiping the nape is a sunnah. And not the throat. Not wiping the throat. Are there any questions on this? One thing I would say is if a person performs ablution in a public place, like when you stop in services on the motorway, when you perform ablution, you must look at the area in which you are performing ablution. Meaning, if Muslims are leaving puddles of water on the ground, wiping themselves with tissue and throwing the tissue onto the ground, what impression are they giving non-Muslims? So whenever performing ablution in public places, make sure when you enter a toilet, the area is clean after you have left. Likewise, when using a public sink, making sure the area is dry and clean when you have left. This is because living in a majority non-Muslim country, we are ambassadors of Islam, role models of Islam. So everything Muslims do is an impression of Islam for the non-Muslim. Sunnahs of the purificatory bath. وَيُسَنُّ فِي الْغُسْلِ أَيْضًا. So here the sunnahs of the ghusl, التسمية والنية وغسل اليدين ونجاسة لو كانت على بدنه بانفرادها ثم الوضوء كوضوء الصلاة ثم يفيض الماء على بدنه ثلاثا ويبتدئ بصب الماء برأسه ثم منكبيه الأيمن ثم الأيسر ويدلك جسده. The following are sunnah in the purificatory bath also. Beginning with the name of Allah, meaning tasmiyah, beginning with the intention, washing the hands and any filth if it is on one's body by itself. Following by performing the ablution like the ablution for prayer. Then one pours water over one's body 3 times, beginning by pouring the water over one's head and then one's shoulders, the right followed by the left. Of course, this was when people would use buckets. Now most people use showers. And finally, one passes one's hands over one's body as one washes. Sunnahs of dry ablution, meaning those things which must be done during tayammum, which is dry ablution. وَيُسَنُّ فِي التَّيَمُّمِ التَّسْمِيَةُ وَالتَّرْتِيبُ وَالْمُوَالَاةُ وإقبال اليدين وإدبار ما بعد وضعهما في التراب وتفريج أصابعهما ونفضهما. The following are sunnah in dry ablution. Beginning with the name of Allah. So saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning. Observing the recommended order between wiping the limbs. Meaning, if someone wipes the arms first and then wipes the face, he has gone against the prophetic manner of performing tayammum. But the question is, if someone is walking in the desert and a wind blows or a desert storm comes and the person intends tayammum, is his tayammum done? The answer is yes. What he does, he intends, his intention must be there, and then once the sand blows on his face and arms, he just rubs. And his tayammum is done. To wipe uninterruptedly. Moving the hands forward and pulling them backwards after placing them on the earth. So when rubbing them on the earth, moving them forward and backwards, and then spreading the fingers when striking the earth, and shaking the dust off them, meaning the hands. Are there any questions regarding any of these sunnahs?
You mentioned obviously for ghusl if you forgot a body part. Is that the same with wudu as well? If you forgot about the part, after how long you can actually...
The question is, if someone during wudu forgets to wash a certain limb, does he go back and just wash that limb, or does he perform the entire ablution again? The answer is, he goes back and he just washes that area. So someone is performing ablution, they wash the face, they wash the arms, they wash the feet, but they forget to wipe the head. Later on they just go and wipe the head.
But why if he performed salah after he remembered and he forgot to wipe his head?
If he performed salah, prayer, and after prayer he remembered he had forgotten to wipe the head, meaning he was certain, then he must wipe the head and then re-perform the prayer. Purification from filth. This relates to actual impurities. So, what we covered relates to ritual impurity. Now what we cover is that which relates to actual impurity. A question here: if one wears makeup that is not waterproof and water reaches the surface of the skin, is wudu valid with makeup on? Yes, if the water reaches the skin, the ablution would be valid. Nowadays, they have a nail polish which is not waterproof, so the water reaches the nail. This type of nail polish would be permitted for wudu. Or if a woman places henna, mendi, on the fingernails or the hands, the water does reach the skin. This would also be permitted. But if the makeup, like nail varnish, is such that the water does not reach the nails, then that would not, the ablution would not be permitted. So what they would have to do is remove the nail varnish with nail varnish remover and then wash the nails. والطهارة من الخبث طهارة البدن والثوب والمكان الذي يصلي فيه من النجاسة المانعة. Purification from filth entails purification of one's body, clothing, and place on which one prays from preventative filth. ثم النجاسة على قسمين غليظة وخفيفة فالغليظة كالدم السائل وميتة كل ذي دم سائل وبول ما لا يؤكل لحمه ونحوه ولعاب سباع البهائم وخرء الدجاج والبط والإوز. Physical impurity is of two types, heavy and light. What is meant by heavy and light is that impurity which has a heavy ruling and that impurity which has a light ruling. Meaning, the one that has a heavy ruling means the less of it has a heavy ruling. And that which has a light ruling, the amount permitted by which the prayer is still permitted is more. The heavy is like flowing blood. The carcass of every animal having flowing blood. The urine of that animal whose flesh is not lawful to be consumed and the like. So the urine of a sheep or a goat or a cow would fall into the second category, light. But the urine of a dog, a monkey, a swine, all these animals that are impermissible to eat would fall into the first category. The saliva of predatory animals, like the saliva of a dog, the saliva of a lion, and the excrement of chickens, ducks and geese. So chickens, why specifically chickens? Because chickens eat from impurity from the ground. So when they roam around, they eat from impurity. Therefore, the droppings of chicken are the ruling of heavy impurity, meaning the ruling is severe. Unlike birds that fly, like pigeons. Even though pigeons eat from impurity, the reason being that sometimes pigeons and birds that fly are unavoidable. So the ruling differs. So the ruling of chickens is severe, and the ruling of birds that fly overhead is light. Are there any questions on this?
You said the saliva of the animals. So if a human drooled on themselves, would that nullify the wudu?
The predatory animal here is excluding human beings. Good question, Ania. So, وَالْخَفِيفَةُ كَبَوْلِ الْفَرَسِ وَمَا يُؤْكَلُ لَحْمُهُ وَخُرْءِ طَيْرٍ لَا يُؤْكَلُ. And the light is like the urine of a horse, and that animal whose flesh is lawful to be consumed, and the excrement of a bird that is not lawful to be consumed. So here, the urine of a horse. Why a horse? Because the horse meat is makruh tanzihi. To eat horse meat is what? Makruh tanzihi. وَالْمَانِعُ مِنَ الْغَلِيظَةِ. So what is the limit? Now we do the limit of major impurities. Because some people, when you tell them, brother, come and pray salah, what do they say? We cannot pray salah because we have impurity on our clothing. So what is the limit of the impurity on the clothing? The author states, وَالْمَانِعُ مِنَ الْغَلِيظَةِ مَا زَادَ عَلَى قَدْرِ الدِّرْهَمِ وَمِنَ الْمُخَفَّفَةِ مَا بَلَغَ رُبْعَ الثَّوْبِ أَوِ الْبَدَنِ. The preventative amount of the heavy filth is what exceeds the size of a dirham, and the preventative amount of the light filth is that what reaches a quarter of the clothing of the body. Now this means a dirham. How do we measure a dirham? Some people give the example of a 50 pence coin. A better example would be if you place your palm out flat and you place water on the palm, the amount of water that rests on the palm, if this much of the heavy impurity is on the body or on the clothing, the prayer is invalid. So if there is that amount of blood or any other impurity on the body or on the clothing, the prayer would be invalid. If there is less than this, the prayer would be valid, even though the person is obligated to remove the impurity. But the prayer would be valid. If it's that amount, meaning the dirham amount, then it would be wajib, necessary for the person to remove the impurity. If it exceeds that amount, then it becomes fard, an obligation to remove that impurity. If it is less than that amount, it is sunnah mu'akkada, meaning emphasized sunnah, to remove that impurity. So when people say we cannot pray the prayer because we have impurity on our clothing, you must ask them, are you walking around with this much impurity on your clothes? Any human who has any civil behavior will not walk around with that much impurity on the clothing. So they are obligated to go and change their clothes. In Sharia, they should not be walking around with impurity. Muslims should not behave in such a manner. But you will be shocked at how many Muslims today make this excuse. We have impurity on our clothes, therefore we cannot pray. So if the impurity is less than that amount, the prayer would be valid. As for the lighter impurity, so here we are in the countryside, the droppings of a goat or a sheep would be lighter impurity. Someone is walking in the countryside, they fall into some cow pat. How much of that is forgiven? A quarter of the clothing. But what is meant by a quarter of the clothing? The arm length is considered one part, so 1/4 of the arm length. Or the torso, the chest, the torso of the body, 1/4 of that. Or the leg, 1/4 of that. Meaning if 1/4 is impure, then it's wajib to remove that. If less, then it's sunnah muakkada to remove that. So if someone is walking now and they fall and they have a stain of cow dung or cow pat on the clothing, if the stain of cow dung is less than 1/4 of that particular area, then their prayer would be permitted. Because then it would be unavoidable in country areas. وَيَطْهُرُ مُتَنَجِّسٌ بِنَجَاسَةٍ مَرْئِيَّةٍ كَدَمٍ بِزَوَالِ عَيْنِهَا وَلَوْ بِمَرَّةٍ عَلَى الصَّحِيحِ وَلَا يَضُرُّ بَقَاءُ أَثَرٍ شَقَّ زَوَالُهُ وَغَيْرِ الْمَرْئِيَّةِ بِغَسْلِهَا ثَلَاثًا وَالْعَصْرِ كُلَّ مَرَّةٍ. Anything defiled by filth visible to the eye, such as blood, is purified by the removal of its body. Meaning, once you remove the impurity, once you have removed the impurity, the clothing is considered clean. So if someone is it necessary to use water? The answer is no. So if someone removes the impurity with vinegar, they have an impurity on the clothes and they remove the impurity with vinegar, the clothing would be considered clean. By the removal of its body, even if it is with a single wash, according to the correct position, and the remainder of any trace difficult to remove is of no consequence. Meaning sometimes someone may have a blood stain, they wash and wash and wash, and the blood stain leaves some color. This would be permitted. Filth that is not visible to the eye is removed by washing it thrice and rinsing it each time. Like sometimes a child may urinate on a blanket, but the urine is not visible. When the urine is not visible, they must wash the cloth 3 times. Some people ask regarding washing machines. What is the legal ruling relating to washing machines when you place garments in the washing machine? The answer is, if you have clothing which has major impurity like blood or any other major impurity, urine or anything else, and you place that with clothing which just smells, meaning it has no impurity. In the old days, the washing machines would not remove the water. So this would mean the water that comes in, once it touches the clothing, the water becomes impure. So this would mean the entire clothing in the washing machine is impure. But in today's day and age, what happens is that the washing machines, they bring in water, the water circulates in the washing machine, then is released. Then fresh water comes in, then washes the clothing, then is released, then fresh water. So therefore the clothing is considered clean. If someone says no, because initially when the water came, it touched impurity, then that would mean all the clothing became impure. So when that water was drained, then the fresh water came, this would mean the fresh water is now impure. If we give the ruling that it remains impure and each time it is impure, then it would be impossible to purify anything. Why? Because if you have a container which has impurity, you place water into the container, you wash out the container, remnants of that water will remain. So that water is also impure. So then you place fresh water in and you clean out the container, then that water will also become impure. And you would continue like this ad infinitum to no end, and the ruling would become impossible, meaning Islam is not a religion which is impossible to practice. Another question some people ask is regarding detergents, that some detergents have bones of animals, like washing powder and things like this. So how can we purify clothing or use liquids on the floor and say the floor has become clean by using detergents? The answer is that when that bone of those animals was placed in those detergents, the bone underwent something known as tahweel. The jurists call this tahweel. Tahweel is when the very essence of that thing changes. Like if you burnt a swine, someone took a piece of swine, flesh, pork, and they burnt it until it became ashes. If those ashes went onto your clothes, the ashes would not be considered impure. So the detergents fall under that ruling. Otherwise, it would become impossible for anyone to consider anything pure. Likewise, if there is alcohol in paint, in the paint that we place on walls, there is alcohol in this. This would become impossible to avoid. وتطهر النجاسة بالماء وبكل مائع طاهر مزيل كالخل وماء الورد ونحوهما. Filth is removed with water and with every pure cleansing liquid such as vinegar, rose water and the like. So these liquids that we have today and they remove filth, those liquids would be permitted. And here we finish Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification. Inshallah, we will have a break, and after the break we will have a questions and answer session. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam ma huwa ahlu. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam ma huwa ahlu. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam ma huwa ahlu. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.